Hello, happy Tuesday, and welcome to Breaking into Hollywood, the Master Course, Week 3. I can't believe we're 2 shows down. If you missed last week's show, we had an amazing guest, Michael Shipley, talking about the world of comedy and working in it and the constraints and the challenges and all kinds of great tips. Go grab a look at that if you haven't seen it. Tonight, we've got an equally exciting guest. We've got Christopher Kubasik. He has so much experience and so much to say as a director, a writer, and I am going to hand over to Gary to get that moving. Hello, Gary Goldstein. How are you?
Fabulous, Beth, and thank you, and so happy to be here, and truly excited that Christopher Kubasik has graced us with his presence. A very interesting guy you're going to get to know over the course of the next 45 minutes, 60 minutes. So let me give you the formal intro, and then we'll get down and dirty. The formal intro is that Christopher Kubasik is currently working on several feature assignments and has several feature films and streaming series in development as a director. He's a writer and a director. He's the creator of a pretty well-known series called The Booth at the End, produced by Michael Eisner's Vuguru, which is streamed exclusively on Hulu.com in the United States and distributed around the globe by Fox International. In 2006, Christopher was the head writer on Stranger Adventures, which received 3 Emmy nominations. 3 Emmy nominations for broadband content. Wow. Pretty impressive. Prior to that, Christopher was hired by New Line Cinema to adapt the BattleTech franchise. And he's also the author of 5 published novels, and he has founded a production company to create and distribute shows and commercials designed specifically for new media platforms. So, Christopher, welcome.
Thank you.
We're going to cover a range of ideas this evening that are very near and dear to my heart, and I would simply start by suggesting that, when we talk about breaking into Hollywood, I really, personally, I define that as a pretty embracing idea, which is really not geographic and not even major Hollywood studios or networks necessarily, although that's wonderful if that's your objective. It's for everyone who aspires to be and have a sustainable life experience and career as a maker, as a creator, as a storyteller, as a creative professional. So whether you desire to be writing, directing, producing, acting for the major studios or the networks, film or TV, or whether you're a rule breaker, an iconoclast with great ideas about how to do alternative, indie fare, web or otherwise, there's certain core things, principles, ideas, values, if you will, that I hold dear and I think apply for all of us. And there's 2 that really kind of in the moment in my brain are standing out. One is something that I used to say with great vigor to the people that I represent a million years ago when I was a literary manager in the Pleistocene era, I think it was, which is write who you are, write what lights you up. Be true to that first and foremost. That's the religion of it. And the other principle or idea would be don't wait, take action. Take dominion proudly over the building step by step, brick by brick of your career. Create your own content. Don't wait for permission. And I don't know anyone who really sort of, if you, in a sense, exemplifies that level of creative intelligence and willfulness and consciousness better than you, Christopher. We were talking about it a little bit earlier, so I'm just going to dive right in and say, let's share some thoughts with our audience this evening about, how important is it and what does it really mean to chase your passion, if you will?
That's really interesting. That's really interesting phrasing as well. I think chasing your passion is not exactly how I would phrase it. I'm not trying to correct you. It's just sort of how I would approach it. Because, again, it's what you just said a moment ago. That's about taking the action. And I think chasing your passion implies somehow that it's out there. And my attitude is that you always wake up and you do the thing you have to do. Again, this is something that you and I talked about earlier, that let's take writers, directors, and actors. writers of the three have the easiest, which is one of the reasons I pursued this path a while ago as my entry point, is that I did not have to wait on anyone to get going writing something that day, and writing it the next day, and writing it the next day. No one had to say, I will now give you permission to write a screenplay. You can just do that. Now, directing and acting is a much more social activity, so that becomes a little bit more complicated, but we can look at Billy Bob Thornton doing Swing Blade, writing that material as a one-man play, getting it made as a feature film, that there are ways of, even as an actor or director, what's her name? I'm going to blank on some of people's names. I'm not great at this. Britt Marley, I think her name is. She did Another Earth and has iWorld coming out, I think. But she gets up at 5 in the morning. My girlfriend tells me, who's an actress who's been looking into her, gets up at 5 in the morning, works on the scripts with her writing partner, and then goes off and does her acting stuff. She's been building her own material, and I think that there's a great lesson in saying, I'm not chasing after what somebody can offer me, but I have this passion in me right now, and I can take action on it. I have to chase that. I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's a power all of us have that we can just do things that we want to be doing in one way or another right now, and we don't need other people's permission or approval to either get a job, because we can make our own job, or get creative work. Because I think one of the traps of Hollywood is that there's this belief that if you get the job, the assignment, the part, suddenly everything's going to be okay. And on so many levels, that's tricky. At the most immediate level, the deal can fall through or never actually happen. You can wait 3 years for the movie after it's optioned, for the option to expire, and then nothing happened after all anyway. And then you can even get the job, but then you've got to get the next job after that. So my only point is, the moment you're waiting for someone else to give you the chance to do your work, then you're in a waiting period, rather than saying, I better take more control of this. I ought to be doing my own stuff and setting my agenda and my pace, because there's a belief that it's out there. There's that brass ring you can grab. And my analogy is always that I want to be making my own brass ring, because I can.
I would agree with that. I would change chasing to living your passion, because it's really about developing a discipline and a practice that is implementable. And if you're not a writer and you are an actor or a director, you can, albeit it's a little more, as you say, complex, just because it's social, it involves other people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You can organize that. I've seen plenty of people in front of and behind the camera, or together, organize their schedules in such a way that they're creating short content on a consistent basis.
Right.
It's easier than it's ever been technologically. And I agree with you that even if you are sort of grabbing the brass ring, whether it's a network or studio environment, I think of it more as, even if those things all go forward beautifully and successfully, you should still be doing these practices, because I believe it's where we as artists live, number one, and number two, I think on a certain level, we all need to be the leader. People look to leaders, and if you're actually creating content on a regular basis, that's the expectation people come to have about you, and it informs the other conversations within your environment.
And keep in mind that you want to go into any meeting. Let's say you write a spec script or you make a short film, and you're called in for a meeting, and they say, and they will, what else have you got? They're always going to ask that, because they might love this one script, but it might not be what they need, or what, more specifically, what their boss needs, right? There's a chain. Everyone's trying to feed the person above them. And if you say nothing, well, then you've got your bottle of water, your Diet Coke, and they show you the door, and that's really it. But if you say, well, I've got this, they can say yes or no to that. If you walk in with 5 things you've been working on, either outline stages or different scripts, you can say, well, I got this, I got this, I got... And the third one, they might go, oh, really? Tell me more about that one. You're only increasing your odds as a director or as a writer of having something that's going to click with the people you get a chance to meet with. I was just reading a series of collected interviews with Joss Whedon, and he was talking about how in his office he has 12 clipboards, at least at the time of this interview, 12 clipboards, each with a different project. hanging on his wall, and he can always pick it up and look at it and see what stage that project's in, whether it's funding or breaking Act 2 or whatever, because he will lose track with 12 things at one time. But I know that I always have many things going, because you never know which one's going to fire, or when you're going to meet someone that's going to be interested in one or the other. So you want to have multiple things. Again, that only can come from self-generated ideas and work. No one's going to pound your door down. 12 people are not going to show up and say, please give us idea. We're going to give you an idea to work on. You have to generate your own material that you can bring to the world.
Amen, brother. Preach it. I agree with you. It's so funny. I'm smiling as you say that, because when you say, what else have you got? I don't know that I've ever in all my years taken a meeting in Hollywood without hearing that question.
Oh no.
Even if
it is the question.
Even if they're buying the project you walked in the door to talk about,
yes.
primarily, they still ask the question, and what else? So it's either because they don't want or they do want. Either way, they want to know.
And the thing is, because they're hungry. The thing is, look, the odds are always horrible. Let's just, as my friend Eric Heiser said to me one time, there's just not enough work for everybody. There just isn't. There are more people who want to be writers, directors, and actors than there are slots for every year of production. That's just a fact. But at the same time, the town is horribly hungry.
Right.
It wants a great script. It wants an exciting idea. It wants an actress who can fill this role that we've never seen before. Like, the town needs us. No matter what level you're on, you may have the thing that the town needs, because the town needs a lot. And especially in the world of broadcast, cable, and streaming now, whether it's ABC or HBO or Netflix, the hours of content of dramatic narrative, whether it's comedic or drama, is exploding. When you think back to, you'd have a certain number of movies every year, let's say 30, 40 years ago, and 3 networks.
Right.
And that was it.
That was the menu.
I would say that was the menu. More importantly, it was the pipeline of production. Like, that was it. There are more shows. There's more hours of content being produced now than there have been a decade ago. So in another way, there's actually more opportunity to be that thing that you walk into the meeting, they go, what else have you got? You go, I got this. And they go, oh, thank goodness. We need something. Exactly. That might be it.
And I love that you bring this up. This is so crucial, because people, I think, are inclined to believe some of the media's negative point of view, which is contraction and the sky is falling. The truth is, there has never been such a quantum of production as there is today. But what's even more important, I think, is what's underneath that, which is human nature. And whether you're at a studio, a network, an indie company, it doesn't matter. That quest, that appetite for discovery of what next, the next new great story, the next new great storyteller. And as many famous, wise people far smarter than me have always said, it all starts with the writer. So you're wise to start as a writer, or be a high.
That was my agenda. I made a choice to say, I remember years ago, I was living in Los Angeles my first time. It didn't stick the first 2 times. And I was reading an article in the New York Times. Somebody was being interviewed from UCLA, and he was working on a spec script about based off McHale's Navy, and going on about how the people who make movies today don't understand what people want. And I'm thinking, this is a kid coming out of UCLA who's convinced that, like, what movies should be is McHale's Navy movie. And I left. I went, whatever this place is about, I don't understand. And I said, I want to be the guy who can walk into a meeting or be on a set and know when a story is on track or off track, because I do think it comes down to story. And when you're under pressure of production, or it's a crazy night and it's 3 in the morning and somebody says, well, we can just do this, to have the ability to say, actually, if we do that, we lose this, and we're going to be doing reshoots for a week when we're done to make up for what we just screwed up. To really have the muscles of story strong in me was one of my very fierce goals. I feel very confident about that right now. And so stepping up as a role as director is my next project. The next thing I really want to be working on. I've directed a short. I have a deal set up at Viguru. The people set up the booth at the end to do a feature-length version of that short film. I've got an offer to direct a TV series if we go streaming with it. We're looking at the financing right now. So that's what I'm moving into, but I feel comfortable with it, not because I love directing. I love directing, but I feel that the muscles of story are the thing that you have to have on a set because there's so much going on. And if you lose track of that story, you're fixing things later that's just going to make it a mess.
Yeah, I see a lot of, it's true. A lot of people get lost in details and lose the center.
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking about the short film that I have seen, I am praying for the day that gets turned into something more, because it is some of the most genius-inspired, performance-driven, dialogue-rich, unbelievable moments I've seen. So I hold a good thought.
I think you're being too kind, but thank you very much. I think it's a good piece of work.
It's exceptional. It goes back to our first point, which is really doing that thing which you have studied. It's so emblematic of what I understand to be the Christopher Kubasik's unique creative signature. It's so aligned with who you are. It's quite brilliant. I want to shift a little bit, because I mean it's sort of in the same vein. But when we talk about, I'm big on this idea of being accountable. You know, I want to go a little bit further with this idea of taking responsibility and taking dominion or control over your career, and thus of your choices about material and content, as opposed to being active versus reactive.
Sure.
And you've been through the wars. You've been on the film side, on the TV side, on the web side, in and out of meetings, and with a lot of success. I mean, you've won several awards for really beautiful content. You've sort of pioneered. You've been at the vanguard of your own journey of discovery about the new landscape, including being exclusive on Hulu. And I mean, that's a whole nother level of experience, which is quite interesting. But I want to talk for a moment about what does it mean to choose to be an artist, and versus, I mean, what motivates you, and how should we think about our relationship to the larger community?
Well, just because we have an audience, and this isn't just about me, let me say quickly, everybody's got different reasons for pursuing any of this stuff. So my reason may be very odd to other people, but I'll tell you what it is for me, but I also honor the fact that there's a million reasons to be an actor or a writer or a director or a production designer or whatever. I just know that my instinct is to make things. I mean, when I was a kid, I literally painted murals, really good murals of the Marvel comic book characters, life-size murals of the comic book characters from Marvel on my wall. Like, I went and did that. I made short films with Super 8mm camera. I was drawing all the time. I was writing stories and building them into books. So the instinct to make things is just very much a part of my happiness. I feel most comfortable when I'm in that mode, for better and for worse. And so to me, the propulsion is, I just want to be doing this, and I want to be paid to do it, because I really like doing it. That means I'm doing it more. On a given, in my waking hours, I'm spending more time doing that. So I would like to do that. That's what matters to me. The other aspect of that, though, is sharing. I try to be a good writer, and a good writer to me is somebody. I'm sorry, my earbuds are echoing in my own ear. A writer, I think, brings what it means to be a human being to other people, so we feel less lonely. And this is where I have my own aesthetics about what Hollywood makes, what I like to make, and the movies I like, and the movies I'm like, whatever. There are shows and movies that sort of make it, I had a good time, but they don't connect us in any particular way. And I like to just say, life is hard. We're all in this. We're all going through the same things in one way or another. How can we connect in this process? So that's what I try to bring to my storytelling. I also try to do it with engaging plots and characters that the audience stays and watches to the end. That's what it is for me.
Can I jump in here and ask, that's a really interesting way of going about building something. Do you check yourself during your progress to make sure you're standing by what you set out to do?
Yes. I'm working on a TV pilot right now, and I realized I was off beam. I was making something a little bit too much like what you would think a TV show would be, so that I could make something that would sell as a TV show, rather than saying, no, 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 I built a weird premise on purpose. I cannot betray that. I have to make sure to stay on track with what this show is supposed to be about. It's about religion, and I think religion's a really complicated topic, and I want something that's going to be scary, because I think if you really jump into religion, what it asks of us is a really scary thing. And it's both comforting, but also it demands a lot if you're really going to commit to it. And I have to make sure to go all the way into that subject. Even though I'm not a practitioner of any religion, I want to honor the fact that religion is a very, very big part of being a human being, and I want to really honor the fact that it's harsh and great at the same time. And that meant making something that may not feel like a normal TV series. And I really wanted to stay on top of that. So that's, yeah, I have to check in with that all the time, because you can get lazy.
All right, am I back?
You are.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, have we lost Bethan? I'm sorry about that.
Yeah. She asked me a really smart question about checking in with myself when I'm writing to make sure I am on that beam of doing the service of communicating and bringing us together the way I want to as a writer. And I said, yes, I have to. I will. I just did it the other day, and I had to stop writing something and rework it because I was doing a TV show all of a sudden instead of the thing I meant to be writing. I was writing it the way I thought you do to sell a TV show rather than honoring the show I meant to be writing. So yeah, you have to check in all the time, I think, because the market considerations can screw up your head.
Oh, they're very seductive.
Yeah.
And sometimes very subtle. So I just on a technique level, Christopher, that's so interesting to me. So how did that recognition come up in that moment for you? Was it in dialogue with someone? Were you getting feedback? Was it just...
No. My own instincts. I just imagined watching the show, and I just thought, oh, I'm getting kind of bored. I will, whenever I'm brainstorming a new project or trying to figure out a project, invariably I write this one sentence a bazillion times every year on yellow legal pads. I mean, I'm always writing this one phrase. What do I want to see? I think that is the most vital question. Not what do I want to sell, not what do other people want to buy, not what was popular last week at the box office. It's what do I want to see? And I got that from George Lucas, because he opened up the papers, wanted to go see a movie, and it was the early 70s, and it was all these dark, really great, amazing movies, but it was nothing fun or fluffy at all, and he just wanted to go see a fun movie. And he's like, well, I want to see something fun, and that's where Star Wars came from, because no one was making a movie like Star Wars at that time. And he said, I made the movie I wanted to see. And then decades later, somebody asked Peter Jackson, how did you stay focused and sane 10 years working on the Lord of the Rings movies? And he said, I wanted to see them. And I'm like, that's genius, because it takes all the onus off of having to be a genius, amazing creative person, because you're rewarding yourself, and also make sure you're not getting caught up in the marketing concerns. Because here's the thing, if somebody's already got that movie at the box office, that also means 3 other people are developing it somewhere in town as well, right? They're already chasing that one. There's no point in chasing that again. It's already out there. I think the studios, those 3 studios chasing the thing that's already popular, I think they're foolish, because the audience already has that. They don't need it again. They need the next thing, because I already got that thing. So my attitude is, if I make what I want to see, it's by definition what's not being made. Because if I can just turn it on and watch it at HBO, I don't have to write it anymore. Yay! That relieves me of that responsibility. I have to write the things that aren't being made, and that's my job. What do I want to see? By definition, I can't see it anywhere else, so that's what I should be writing.
There's a really good question that came up that you guys touched upon earlier, but perhaps if you went a bit deeper. Hi, Gary and Chris. This is from Cynthia Sperry. Is there a new market in writing and producing content for the internet as opposed to just TV and films? Thank you very much for sharing.
Well, I would suggest we have the perfect guest to answer that question.
And the perfect guest says it's complicated. I mean, it's a very weird thing that's happening right now because 5 years ago to 10 years ago, everyone was talking about new media and the internet. But what you're seeing happening is once Netflix dumped all that money into House of Cards, I'm sorry, House of Cards. Remember, that's internet. That is internet. That's streaming. And so let's say a production company like Wigs, which does a lot of great work with female-centered stories. Some friends of mine went to pitch them last year, at the end of last year, and they were told, oh, yeah, well, what you're pitching us we would have made a year ago, but now we want to up the game. And what they're really saying is they want stuff that looks like TV shows, half hours or hours, and have the production values, if not the stars, of those shows as well. So, and then also my deal with Vaguru, they've changed their model, and they originally were supposed to be making content for the internet, and now they're moving to producing for television. That's the format they want to work in, because making money off of streaming specific material is very complicated. Hulu is there, Crackle is there, Netflix, Amazon are the big players. There used to be many more. There are not. And I would say it's basically becoming just bundled together. That is, the audience doesn't care how that show arrives in their home. I use Roku. I don't know anything about where this stuff's coming from. I go to the search function, I click in the name of a movie or TV show. If somebody's playing it, I watch it. It's from Amazon or Netflix or somebody or Hulu Plus. I don't know. I don't care. So my point is, and this touches on what we said earlier, there's more content being needed, but it's in a weird way, it doesn't matter whether or not it's a streaming service or a cable service or a broadcast service, in my view. The budgets are different, the production elements are different, the requirements for getting a green light are different, because if you don't have as much money, you can't expect as many production elements. But I just see there's more opportunity, and I would also say this, that you can make things to put on YouTube, for example. Monetizing is almost impossible, but it could be the thing that gets you noticed if you build a series of really great pieces over time, and that will launch you maybe up to a further place up the chain. But in terms of, and I should say clearly that my producing partner and I, we were talking last night, I'm going to be building a series of, like the Booth, stories that are cut into 5 half-hour episodes that finish, and then we start another one that grows the world of the story. We want to be selling those on iTunes and Amazon directly to the viewers, as well as hopefully setting up licensing agreements with Amazon or Netflix or Crackle or whomever. But we're going to embrace that opportunity. It's risky, but I see that as if I'm going to say anything about like building something specifically for the internet, as opposed to everything on the internet moving over to looking like TV or cable, I would say self-producing and then distributing yourself through a paid service like iTunes. That seems like an interesting model to me. I don't know if it's going to work, but that's something I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
What you said was really, sorry, Gary. What you said was really interesting there about producing for a streaming service. That they're looking for big names, they're looking for TV quality. So, what are the differences in budgets that they're offering?
Well, that's the nightmare. I mean, I have this short film that I sold the concept to Vaguru, and they want to make it. Well, the project's on hold right now because they're reworking their model, but they wanted to make it for no money and yet get a name at the same time. And I think that's where they caught themselves up and said, oh, we actually want to be making TV because maybe there's more money there. I think that there's this weird attitude in this town that if you make it for the internet, somehow by definition, it costs less.
Right, yeah.
I don't know why. I mean, I went back to this when I sold a show to Stage 9 at Disney back in 2008, I think it was. They just were aghast when the budget came in from the director on my project. And they said, how can it cost this much money? It's for the interest. Like, well, the script costs this much money to make. It doesn't matter where we're distributing it. It's the production. And there is this weird attitude of, it's for the internet, it's just less than. I don't know why. So they want the buzz of a name or the buzz of a great production, but it's complicated pulling that talent in. Now, on the other hand, let's never forget that if you write a great piece of material, that really is going to feed an actor or a DP or whoever's needs, people will show up. You know, Xander Berkeley was amazing in the booth at the end, and he did it because he liked the material. He had no reason financially to do it. Trust me, nobody made any money on the booth at the end, but he wanted to do that show. And so I think that's where your magic comes in, is can you make something that intrigues somebody enough that they go, well, this happened for the booth at the end for me. I don't know if people know the show. It's about a man who sits in the back corner booth of a diner, and he will give you anything you want. Your wife will love you, your son will live again, whatever, and you have to go do something you don't want to go do. And so there's 8 characters or so who come and interact with him, and every scene we cut back and forth between these characters, and eventually the stories begin interlinking. So Xander's in every scene, and then we have 8 scenes with the other character that act against him. We would bring in an actor, there are 8 scenes, wrap them for the day, the next day another actor comes in, boom. It's like Christmas morning. A new actor shows up every day. It was beautiful. And almost every day the actor came up to me and said, thank you so much for this. Like, they were just so happy with the material and a chance to do it. Because apparently a lot of actors in this town are really unhappy with the material they're auditioning for or get cast in. And they were really happy with this script. So if you make something that's going to feed other artists, which I think is a screenwriter's job, a screenwriter creates jobs for other people. That's what a writer does. They create opportunities for craftsmen to do their job well. So if you do that, people read your script and go, oh, I'd like to do this. Now, some of them will only do it if the money's there, and they'll pass if it isn't. And others will say, I'm not doing anything else. I remember why I came to this town. I want to do this. And they'll do it. So that's, I think, you get a weird freedom. In a weird way, if you're doing streaming content with no money, you weed out all the nonsense, and only the people who really want to do it show up, which is kind of an awesome thing to have happen. It really is. It's not about the deals anymore. It's about making the thing. Now, I think there's other ways of financing it, like Joss Whedon for Dr. Horrible Sing-Along. They came up with a profit-sharing plan for everybody. And I think there are ways of saying, if this blows up, how do we reward everybody's investment? I know Lizzie Bennett Diaries, which was this amazingly successful Emmy-winning show that was on Twitter and Facebook and videos. It was really brilliant. They had to sort out suddenly making a lot of money through the Kickstarter campaign they did to release the show on DVD. And so there are going to be these new channels of income and thus distribution. Making sure nobody feels burned is part of the challenge of that, but it can be worked out.
Brilliant answer. I actually agree. I think that there's a lot of focus and time and attention paid to the delivery vehicle, to the label. Mm-hmm. But I think the whole thing is one big blur and sliding scale, and it is really ultimately about the quality of the storytelling and the characters. Mm-hmm. You know, even, I mean, just a couple of weeks ago or several weeks ago, Google announced that they're starting on YouTube a tip jar, right? Which is sort of like the shot across the bow telling Kickstarter and all these other crowdfunding platforms, by the way, we're coming. The British are coming. And right. Tip jar is a code word for we're going into crowdfunding. So, you know, gird your loins because it's going to be a battle. But even that idea is relevant. It's just at one end of the spectrum, and the other end of the spectrum are the anomalous things like Netflix, who has a huge investment and business model to support, and therefore thought it wisdom to throw super dollars, network plus level dollars at House of Cards. That's not going to be the norm, certainly not yet. But even at Amazon, what I would call the major internet networks, right? Mm-hmm. Amazon, Hulu, Netflix, etc. We don't know exactly where this is going, but what you said earlier, what Christopher said earlier, is true. It's not just about the quality of your story, but there is this plethora of distribution channels and greater collective need for great story and vehicles to put out into the world. So I don't know that the best filter is to figure out, you know, what can I create for the internet. I think it goes back to what you said. It's like, what do you want to see? That was a beautiful, I didn't know that came from George Lucas. I didn't know that you write that as a mantra. But I think that's really kind of, that's at the crosshairs of what we should be focusing on.
The other thing I would say about internet is that I do believe different delivery platforms the experience we want watching a TV series in our living room is different, I think, than what we want seeing a movie. I think there's a lush, romantic, dreamlike quality to movies that makes more sense when you have an environment that envelops you like a movie theater screen can. The budgets of TV series are always going to be smaller per minute, so that you do depend more on dialogue and characters' faces to carry the story. When I built the booth at the end, I wanted something very intimate and almost voyeuristic. You could see it in the setting and how I set up the show, because it was going to be somebody watching it on their laptop or an iPad or whatever, and they were going to be holding it. They don't even hold the TV show. It's going to be like this close to the person if they were watching it on their phone or an iPad. So I built a story that was going to be very small and quiet as well, because I think that played to the technology and the delivery system, if that makes sense. But I think your overall point is right. It's like, what can you make? How are you going to make it? Some shows, what was it? You know, Buffy. Again, I was reading the Whedon book. Buffy the Vampire Slayer was a feature film that really kind of failed. And then 3 years later, a producer calls Whedon and say, "Hey, we're thinking about making this a TV series." And he's like, "Oh, yeah, that might work." And then it became like the thing that changed a lot of television. I see Buffy as part of the steps from Twin Peaks through X-Files and Buffy to what we have today in terms of what we're calling this amazing age of television. And you don't know how you're going to best execute something or who's going to want to buy it. The show I have right now, the TV pilot that's out, ostensibly everybody wants to make it a streaming show, but again, there aren't that many streaming buyers. It's Crackle, it's Netflix, it's Amazon, it's Xbox set up their studios. If we go cable or network, there's just 24 more buyers, possibly. And I think that we're going to go where we can to get the show made. That's my concern. So I'm not thinking in terms of like streaming or cable or network. I'm thinking, who's the best fit for this material so that they make it the right way and don't flinch just before they air it and screw it up.
Do you remember your break into Hollywood? What was the defining moment for you that thought, actually, what I really want to do, I'm going to be able to do?
That's such an interesting question. I'll tell you my answer in a moment because my brain's actually trying to sort it out. But again, I was just reading this Joss Whedon interview book, and he talked about how he thought he should be getting out of television. This was a few years ago, and someone said, "Why?" He said, "Well, I've had 2 shows canceled on me." I think that's a sign. Like, here's a man who's had his big break, and now he seems to be, at that time, ready to wrap it all up. I don't know. The reason I say this is because you get your break, and you get a little bit of success, and you move forward, and then you know what you need? You need another break back in. Because you work on that one thing. Really, this stuff, working on a TV series, making a movie, making a web series, is like being a serial entrepreneur. You build one thing, and if you're lucky enough, you get financing, and it gets made, and money comes back in, and then you do it again. Like, you're constantly just starting up a new project over and over and over again. And you take the meetings again, you do the design work all over again. Like, you're just doing it over and over and over. I would say that when we got those 3 Emmy nominations for Stranger Adventures, I knew I had something I could use. Like, that's the best way I can think of it. Out of the blue, someone recommended me on this staff job for this internet series. It was a very clever concept. And I went in for the meeting because they were looking for writers to write the scripts. I listened to their pitch of the show. I said, "That sounds great, but here's how you can make it better." And I pitched their show back at them. And a couple days later, I got a call saying, "Hey, we were thinking about having a head writer to organize the whole show. Do you think you'd be interested in that?" I said, "Well, here's what I want to be paid." And they went, "Whoa, that's a lot of money. That's more than we wanted to pay." I went, "Okay, well, you think about it." And then a couple days later, they called back and said, "Okay, we'll give you 2/3 of that." I said, "Awesome." Took that job, and we worked really hard on it, and we got these 3 Emmy nominations. And we went to New York for the daytime Emmys. It was really fun. But I knew I could now go to people and say, "I have this. I did this on the internet." The first year they were giving out broadband Emmys, I got 3 Emmys for my show. And I took that, and the phrase I always use is crowbar. It was right after that, and that show wrapped up, that Disney started Stage 9, which was supposed to be building internet content. And of course, they were being beleaguered by everybody who had ever posted anything on YouTube, right? And I said, I gotta get in there. I have a show. I want to sell them. And I called the assistant, and the assistant said, yeah, well, Damon's kind of busy. And I called every week for a month, that poor assistant. And I said, I got these 3 Emmy nominations and blah, blah, blah. And I used it as a crowbar to get into that meeting. And I set up that show, and that show never got made, but it got me some money. And then I could say, I'm doing a show for ABC Disney's new media division. And that was my new crowbar. And so the way I view these things is in terms of break. Because, again, I don't think like you suddenly walk in and now you own the chocolate factory. I think you have an opportunity to use what you have now to get the next thing. I think it's one break after another, and what I always see is I get a crowbar to help me open the next door. That's my attitude about that. But I would say the Emmy was the moment I said, at least now I have something that's very unique and specific and mine that I can use to move forward.
I hope you celebrated that night.
Oh, it was a great night. It was a great night.
Yeah. And hopefully along the way, you gather some awards, which you have, and you gather some believers, which helps create ongoing glue, momentum to bridge over.
Oh, yes. Yes. I mean, my producing partner, who's also my manager, he has so much faith in me, it's embarrassing sometimes. And one of the things that causes that faith is the booth at the end. He just really thinks it's really good, and I was really smart to figure all that out. And he has faith I'll figure out other things in the future as well. So yeah, you do find your fans along the way, and yeah, and what you really want are the people who really believe in you. And this goes back to what you were saying earlier about like being true to what you want to make. You want the people who don't want to just use you to get their 10%. Mm-hmm. You want to find the people who really get what you want to make and are going to stand by you when it gets tough. Like, it's complicated to make this thing. Are we making it or are we not making it? I stand by you. We're making it. Great. Now we're making it. You want to collect the people. But here's the key. You only collect those people if you honestly are yourself and make things that are honestly yours, because then you collect the people who are actually honestly attracted to you. I always compare all this nonsense to dating. Always. And if you show up at dates inauthentically and you end up dating that person, eventually it's going to fail because you can't sustain it. But if you show up as a writer or as a man on a date and you're actually yourself and you weed out the people you have no business being with and they have no business being with you, and you actually honestly are yourself, eventually you find the right people because it's honest. And that's how I always approach that hope of finding the right people, by being truly who I am in my work and saying what matters to me most in my work. The people who show up actually care about it. And we go off to make the same right thing together.
Gary, that resonates so much about what you say about authenticity and how important that is to.
It's everything, but I mean, the booth at the end is interesting because to sum all this, to sort of bring all of these, ideas which are obviously related together. Chris made a comment to me, which is like, I need to come up with, and this is not to undermine the extraordinary complexity to figure out the rules of a world and what those characters are and how you push edges and all that stuff. But when you're thinking about what could you do for the internet, he said to me this line in an earlier conversation was about what can I do with 2 actors and a card table. And the brilliance of that then is it's not about exploding bridges or how many dollars I have. If I can create something that special, and this is true across the board, this has nothing to do with the internet. This is just sheer raw storytelling. Mm-hmm. I mean, when J.F. Lawton was my new client, on condition he go write me a spec that I could work with, and he turned in 3,000. That conversation was 2 men and a card table. That's basically the conversation that we had. I said, I need a romance. I need it to take place in a room. I need it to have a clock. And I need to be able to make it for $7. If literally all I had was 1 room or a couple of rooms, and not big name actors. I want to be able to, whatever you write, I want to produce because I know how good you are. So I don't want to be denied the opportunity. And of course, if it attracts more, whether it's more dollars, more, more bigger name talent, whatever the more is, so be it. Great. And that film literally went from Sundance production lab to Vestron to New Regency. It kept failing forward. And thank God it kept failing miserably. I mean, it was one car wreck after bankruptcy court, this, that. It was the 405 on a bad day. But God bless it, failed consistently until it found the right home and the right combination of elements. But the story was always that story. It was his version of Two Men and a Card Table. That's how it was birthed into the world. So it's really not about the medium or the delivery system or the budget even initially. It's about the sophistication and the creativity and the unique perspective and voice that you bring as a creator to that story that's going to, as you said, attract and be like almost catnip, where people will say yes, where otherwise, without a cash offer, they might say no. Yeah, yeah.
And also boundaries, restraints. What am I looking for? What I told you was that the thing at Disney was going to die, and because they never pulled the trigger on any of their projects because of budget concerns. And I said I want something so cheap that no one can say no because of the money. Yeah, you would not like it. Right. You wanted never to be denied over dollars. Right. And I said, well, the cheapest thing I know how to make, I think, is two people at a card table. Like, that's budget-wise possible. And then I grew the rules of the booth out of that. I grew the show from that concern. But I would say that it's constraints that often produce really terrific work. I know that for the things I want to make on my own production end now, the miniseries I want to do and sell on iTunes and Amazon, I need concepts that are the same way. I could say, what are the constraints budget-wise? What are the production concerns that are my boundaries that I can't step over that are cheap enough to make this thing because I have no one financing it but myself. Now, I believe I'm going to pull that off, but it means accepting that boundary, accepting those constraints and working within that. But if you really delve into your constraints, you often find amazing things. And I think sometimes the filmmaking today is a little bit off because you can do anything, and so no one has to make choices about what really matters. It all becomes just equally the same thing. I think that's an interesting observation. I do think that when when you force yourself into that corner of creativity, it's kind of an interesting place where you of discovery. Christopher, absolutely. I can't believe it's already like 12 of the hour. So I cannot thank you enough. Bethan, any final questions from you before we leave Christopher?
Amazing. It was amazing, Christopher. So many good things to get people thinking. I think the constraint thing is so important for those who are working, trying to get in the business, trying to develop their skills, working under the real pressure of giving themselves a very small space to work, to be creative, is such a great tip.
And it means not then becoming frustrated that you don't have all the resources of a studio, because if all that's your focus, then you're stuck on that focus. You don't see that you could still be making something. You say, this is what I have, what can I make? And you make from that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
That idea is incredibly valuable and a great and a great conversation and note to end on. Christopher, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And keep us abreast of your projects, please.
Okay, you got it, man.
Beautiful.
All right, take care, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Gary.
Yes.
You've got a great phone book of wonderful people.
It is a long list. You know what? I am so blessed, and I guess that's one of the rewards or riches of being stubborn and persistent. As you stick around long enough, I think that who was it? Was it Woody Allen who said showing up is 90% of success? I think I'm going to change it. Say sticking around is 90% of success. You stick around, you start to grow, experiences, relationships, whatever. Christopher is a phenomenal, phenomenal man, not just as a creator. He's just a good man, very thoughtful. So, yeah, that was a treat. We're going to continue that, obviously. Bethan, thank you. We're committed to bringing a lot of these amazing folks that we are happy to call our friends and hear them speak to, whether it's film, TV, web, doesn't matter. Like, what are the things that they've learned along, or are learning? Look, we're all still learning, right? We're in this together. And the landscape is so changeable and changing constantly. You have to look at the headlines every week to figure out where the puck is going, as they say. So I look at that, it's exciting. It's not daunting. And if you take to heart what Christopher Kubasik tells us really from his heart tonight, which is, don't worry so much about what you think might sell in today's world, and if so, whether it would sell to internet or to cable or to as a theatrical feature film opportunity at a major studio. Those are really not your proper concerns at the outset. What your concern is telling that story that is undeniable because it's birthed out of a place that is so rich and authentic and true to you and your voice. And I think if you do that, you will find your audience, and I mean your audience in every sense: money, distribution, actual audience members on or offline. So I thought that was a really beautiful and very valuable conversation tonight.
I love tying it all back into Breaking into Hollywood, the Master Course, which is what these live shows are all about. And Michael hit on many things that we cover in that Master Course. And tonight, yep, Christopher did as well about, again, building the relationships, how important those assistants are. That's a big part of the Master Course. And also the legal side of it, because he had a really interesting point that what started out as a really small project turned into something huge. At that point, if you're not covered legally, you could be super screwed, not only on that project, future projects, because it might be conceived that you're difficult to work with going forward, and you might burn a lot of relationships at the same time.
Yeah, he touched on it's so funny because without any prompting, he naturally, and of course the people who've been through it will. I mean, the course is designed out of years of very in the trenches experience. So no coincidence, this lineup of him mentioning things like legal related issues, protecting the integrity of your IP, the amount that he focuses on dealing with assistance, all of these kinds of things that are the sum and substance of each of our modules as we go through it. Even the thing about branding and in identifying your most powerful story, all of these concepts are sort of real ground level part. These are the big chess pieces in the Master Course, Breaking into Hollywood.
So if you've joined us for the first time tonight and have not heard what the Breaking into Hollywood Master Course is about, please go to breakingintohollywood.com. What it is a 10-module series. It's an educational seminar that Gary has put together through his vast experience of working in Hollywood, but coming at it from all different levels and how it will help you break into Hollywood. The way we've built it is really cool. It's very interactive. It's very challenging. What did we reckon? It's a half an hour a week per module, we think?
Oh no, I mean,
half hour a day.
Half hour, please, half an hour a day. Look, we have this it's part of the course. It's when I was beginning and I was a nobody, and I had some new clients who were also nobodies. In order to crack the cosmic egg, break open those doors, create rapport and opportunity, I had a rule, and the rule was that we would each spend half an hour a day. So on each client that I had, I couldn't have more clients than I had half hours in the day. So I would spend half an hour on Bethan, half an hour on Christopher, half an hour on Michael. I would spend half an hour on everybody. And I did that 5 days a week. And that's what I want you as a creative professional to get in the discipline and practice of doing. If you can spend 30 minutes a day, it will be a game changer. But at least initially, as you go through the course, as Bethan's saying, these 10 modules, if you do a half an hour a day, you'll go through at least a module a week. You might do the whole of the 10-module course in 2 months. You might do it in 10 weeks. I'm not sure. It's going to depend on you. How much research? How long did it take you to answer these you do these exercises. How long? We have social prompts, social actions, exercises. It's a very rich environment. By the end of it, though, whether it takes you 8 weeks, 9 weeks, 10 weeks, that's not what's important to me. What's important, I believe, is that at the end of it, you have something that is so uniquely tailored and personalized that it is your action plan, your roadmap, your blueprint for what you need to do for the next 6 to 12 months. It literally goes out into your future. And if you were to spend half an hour doing just what's on your paper, you cannot help, no matter how much you fail, right? When we all do, every one of us, I still do to this day. Every one of you will make enough progress by implementing these practices in half an hour a day that in 6 to 12 months you will actually begin to see the moorings, the anchoring, the platform that becomes a sustainable career.
Absolutely. So we will be back again next Tuesday night. Again, please go into breakingintohollywood.com. Follow us on Facebook. Make sure you're following. You have us in your circles on Google+. Follow us on Twitter so we can keep you posted on who these special guests are. We're also sending out a constant stream of fantastic information from Gary, from other sources that Gary has found that he thinks is going to be really worthwhile to you. So keep us in all your social media circle. It's really worthwhile. And this course, the 10 modules for the amount of money it is what I was told today, a steal. That someone said it should be $3,000 and it's $297.
Not
Maybe
$2. Not $2.97.
No, maybe was that that was the original name of Pretty Woman, wasn't it? 3,000.
3,000 spelled out. Yes. 3,000. Actually, that's funny. 3,000. But here's the thing. Yeah, the course. I know what comes of it. And we'd love you to take a look at it, but we want you to be a part of this community. We are bringing amazing people to bear. We are going to be doing some, for lack of a better word, JV, joint venture stuff, where we're bringing amazing content in. It's going to get really just increasingly rich and resonant and worthwhile. So just go to breakingintohollywood.com, scroll to the bottom, throw in your name and email, be a part of the conversation, and we'll let you know when we put up new content and whatnot.
Fabulous. Gary, thank you so much, and thank you for opening your phone book again. I look forward to see who's on next week.
Thank you, and thank everyone for joining us, and you all have a great evening.